Welcome everybody to another episode of Infinite Crossover. This week we're going to try something different. I keep saying that, but every week it's something different, so that means it's good because you guys are getting not the same boring podcast every week like so many others out there. Sitting across me via Skype is my co-host and creator of CapelessCrusader.org, Mr. Josh Epstein. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty well. Had a good nerdy week so far. Stayed up late last night reading a couple of cool comics, and spent most of the evening though with a couple of the folks who write on Capeless playing really nerdy tabletop games.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
If you guys have noticed too, the last month or so, just over a month, check out the awesome articles that are on both sites right now, fanboysinc.com and capelesscrusader.org. We got a bunch of great staff writers over there, some interesting articles, a lot of, fanboy news, a lot of set pictures from Batman versus Superman. Sonic the Hedgehog gets a movie. What's going on here? That's pretty cool. We talked about that a little bit yesterday on Inkcast. But so there's really some great nerdy news over there, so check it out over fanboysinc.com and capelesscrusader.org. Just
one of my favorite things lately has been talking and working with Austin Gordon, who writes the Market Maven column for us.
Yes.
And we've been slowly putting together a really awesome database of comic book market research. And I'm gonna probably be writing something soon, trying to figure out what the heck has gone wrong with and this is more of a fanboy thing than a capeless thing, really, but what the heck has gone wrong with the Superman titles. Like, Austin and I have been putting together line charts showing sales basically for Marvel and DC books since about 2011, showing so basically since the New 52 started, and trying to compare the two. And while books like Batman, which is always one of the #1 books, pretty much stay consistently with them like a huge spike for things like Villains Month, they can't keep people buying the Superman books
because he's a douche.
Like, but
his character is awful.
They always start out with a really great sales. Like when Grant Morrison was on Action Comics, it was selling like it was the #2 title behind Batman. It was selling like 136,000 copies a month. And I think the last issue of Action Comics that we have numbers for was something like 36,000.
Wow.
So in 3 years, it's lost like 100,000 readers.
Well, people have been complaining about the way this particular Superman is. I mean, and we've seen, and it's across the board in all his comics and in like Justice League 3000.
And the other thing too that's been really nice, interesting about putting this stuff together is I've been listening to you guys talk on Inkcast about the we'll geek out here for a moment before we get into the topic. I've been listening to you guys talk on Inkcast about the rumors about why Marvel is going to be probably putting the brakes on Fantastic Four for a while. And the comics conspiracy theorists all say, oh, it's to screw over Fox and this, that, and the other. But so I went ahead and put together one of our market charts for Fantastic Four over the last 3 years. And its curve looks pretty much exactly the same as that for Action Comics.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, it's been steadily losing readers every month for the last 3 years.
And we talked about that yesterday.
They just can't keep people interested in it. For whatever reason, like, the concept is just not appealing to readers. So I actually think it's probably much less to do with screwing Fox and more to do with the idea, because they've been putting these superstar writers on it, trying to drum up interest, which means you're going to have to pay these people more, and the sales just aren't reflecting it. So it's either they can put a middling writer on it and probably have even worse sales, in which case it's not going to be cost effective to print that book, or they can keep trying to put somebody top tier on it and not get good sales, in which case it's not cost effective to keep printing the book. So I think that it really is more of a market concern than it is, them playing games with the people at Fox.
We touched on it again yesterday, and that's what I brought up. Exactly that was the fact of the lack of sales. The only thing we had in question was the fact, if that's the case, why pull them off their 75th anniversary card set? That was the one thing that we saw, that Fantastic Four, Galactus, Doctor Doom, and Silver Surfer were not to be drawn in the 75th anniversry card set. Doesn't make any sense.
That's kind of curious. But maybe if they're planning on giving the brand a rest for a while, they just want to let it lie.
Right. And you can, and The thing is, though, you want to pull the Fantastic Four, fine, but Doctor Doom, he's been in other books. He is a Marvel villain. He's not just a Fantastic Four
Well,
villain
and you know I've got love for Doctor Doom because I had play with him on Marvel Avengers Alliance.
Yes.
And anybody who's playing that, by the way, your two best bets for beating this nasty symbiote nonsense that's running around right now is to use either Doctor Doom or Reed.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
They're badasses fighting this hybrid thing because they can like cut either a third or half of its life in one move.
Oh, nice. Well,
It's
there you go. You get a little Avengers Alliance game tip right there.
Jeff Hayes actually I guess he's listening live right now. What's going on, Jeff? Says the problem with the Superman titles is not hammering down a consistent idea of who Superman is now, and I think he's really right.
True.
There's probably 3 or 4 different versions of Superman, particularly when the New 52 started.
Yep.
You had what was going on in the core Superman title by that was George Perez, right?
Yep.
You had that going on there. You had Grant Morrison's work boot wearing Superman in Action Comics. You had Punk Superman in Justice League. So yeah, I think he's got a really good point there, and that's one of the problems I think you face when you spread a character out so much, because they've had the same problem with Batman, except that he's Batman, so he sells books.
Of course, you put the symbol on anything and it'll sell.
Yeah, as we saw with some podcast numbers a few weeks back, like you put a bat on it and all of a sudden everybody's listening.
Everybody's listening. And maybe that was DC's attempt in the beginning because of the 3 or 4 different books that came out all had different aspects of Superman. Maybe they were trying to find one that was going to be the niche and people would enjoy. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if they're getting ready to do another major creative move for Superman. I think it's next week that the first issue of the Jeff Johns, John Romita Superman comes out, and it's Romita's first work at DC. I'm really excited for that. I mean, people that have listened for a long time know that I'm a huge Jeff Johns fan.
That's right.
So while I'm not always high on Romita, when he's given time to work right, I think he does really solid work. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that book is, and if Jeff Johns can maybe, if they've identified what the problem with Superman sales are, and maybe Jeff Johns can fix them. I would love to see him do to Superman what he did to Green Lantern, 5-6 years ago.
I was gonna say, could we call him the cleaner?
In a lot of ways. I mean, he hasn't always been a cure-all. You can put Jeff Johns on a bad book and it's not necessarily going to do that much better, but when he's at his best, he can fix just about any book.
That's what I'm hoping. And it's really weird seeing these promotional images of Romita Jr.'s artwork, and I'm like, am I in a Marvel book? I'm just so tuned in that he's a Marvel artist, so having him on a DC title, it's cool but confusing. I'm like, wow, what's going on? Wait a minute, is this a crossover? I'm so
one last plug before we get into the topic, though, and I know you're a big art nerd, so I would seriously recommend that you go out and grab a copy of Infinity Man and the Forever People.
Okay.
Everybody who listens to this podcast knows that I like to rag on Dan DiDio a lot, but
he's co-writing that, correct?
He's writing that with Keith Giffen. Yep. But the cool thing from an art perspective, and I would love to hear your take on this maybe when we come back next week.
Yep.
The artist Scott Koblish, like, he's not Jack Kirby, but he's really damn close.
Yeah, I've seen some of the some of the pieces that have come out. Yeah,
like, it seems like sometimes he forgets that he's trying to do Kirby and gets a little bit more detailed and more modern. But like, looking at it, I'm sitting there like, this looks like, because I've got a copy of the original New Gods #1.
Yep.
And like, this looks the same. Like, the colors are better, and the inks are better because it's modern techniques, but like, it looks like Kirby, and it's really cool.
Maybe he's channeling Kirby's essence through his pen.
Maybe. Well, what's cool is like they have sort of the AI of the house they hang out in, and similar to Jarvis in the Iron Man movies. Mm-hmm. Only the AI's name is Kirby.
Ah, that's funny. That's pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. But speaking of
nice segue there, Mr. Epstein.
That was totally an accident. I promise. Nice. So speaking of AIs, that's actually what we wanted to talk about this week. With Age of Ultron, sort of the next big thing on the horizon. Well, past Guardians of the Galaxy anyway for Marvel. And with all of these different stories that we've seen recently, it's a big part. It was a big part of Forever Evil. It's a big part of Futures End with the Marvel side, and even over on the independent side, we see a lot of stories dealing with artificial intelligence. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt AI was a huge component of Jonathan Hickman's Manhattan Projects for a long time. So I guess what we really want to get into is sort of like looking at why this is such a popular concept.
Well, it's been a fascination. It seems to be a fascination throughout history. I mean, not just in comics, but in any science fiction. You can go back. What can we say? What in the 1800s or 1900s?
Yeah, and it's something that I was actually familiar with from my days growing up as a big radio show listener. There's a show called X-1 I used to listen to, and they referenced this in one of the first stories about robots that they did, and it was called Maelzel's Chess Player. Is considered to be really the first story in fiction about artificial intelligence, and it's actually an Edgar Allan Poe story. And what it is, it's this. It turns out to be a fraud, but this guy who says he has an automated chess player who can beat anybody. And it turns out in the end that there's really just a guy inside the box who's moving the chess pieces around, and he's exposed for being a complete phony.
The first fraud in fiction.
Not the first fraud. No, there have been frauds in fiction since fiction, really.
I know.
But it's interesting that for somebody who is so fascinated with the ideas that surround Gothic fiction in Edgar Allan Poe, that he touched on such a technological theme. Now that's something that isn't necessarily uncommon, but it became more common much later after the turn of between the 18th and 19th centuries. The conflict between humanity and technology, and science and technology, mysticism and technology, is sort of a key component in that sort of Victorian Gothic fiction. I remember we talked about it in my literature, science, and science fiction class in college, but that's really what Dracula was all about. It was about the conflict between Dracula being a creature of mysticism and Van Helsing being a creature of science. Frankenstein is mysticism versus science as well. And in a lot of ways, AI stories get back to that. And modern 20th century fiction, it's we have embraced the capacity of humanity really more than any other period in history in the 20th century. And so we've started to look at what's going to challenge the capacity of humanity. And it's the things that we build, that are tools that we create to help us will someday get so powerful that not even we can control them. And that's really what artificial intelligence is. It's us putting the one thing that we still think separates us from everything else on the planet, that sense of conscious, intelligent self-awareness. And if we hand that over to something that's not limited by biology, that creates a whole universe of unknown possibilities. And as is always the case in science fiction, we always point out that humanity fears what it doesn't understand. And so, since we don't understand what might happen when we reach that point with AI, then we're terrified of what's going to happen.
I know, I totally agree with you. And through going through some of the fiction history here, I'm looking like there's three major categories to be put in AI: the AI dominance, human dominance, and sentient AI. And we see it kind of goes back to our apocalyptic episodes, where the most dominating one is the AI dominance, where it's trying to take over the world, and we try to make it more and more human, and the end result is it wants to conquer. And
we see that definitely in the Avengers stuff. I mean, yeah. Ultron is probably one of the first AI, not the first AI in comics. The first AI in comics would probably have to be the Human Torch.
Oh yeah, Torch, yeah.
The original Human Torch, and he was a good guy. He was basically just a normal dude who happened to be a robot, pretty much. But Ultron, they touched on one of the common tropes with AI science fiction, which is that in looking at how to best protect humanity and how to best serve humanity, they tend to realize that we are our own worst enemy, And so if they and it creates this sort of logical loop where they say, okay, if we want to protect humanity, we have to protect humanity from humanity, which means eliminating humanity, which typically winds up driving AI insane.
Right, and then that's why you have the Isaac Asimov's three laws.
Yep, and for those who aren't big fans of science fiction outside of comics, those are something that have been touched on, and basically everybody has robbed from Asimov.
Oh yeah.
In terms of creating this. The great show Almost Human, which was only made it one season on Fox, like a lot of great shows, used these same three rules as sort of the core of the Dorian AI, which was Law 1. Where did it go? I just had them. These were the general ones.
Law 1, you cannot take a human life.
A robot may not harm a human being. Law 2, a robot
must listen to him.
What is it?
Isn't it Law 2 is must obey a human, but unless it conflicts with Law 1.
Right. And then what was Law 3?
I believe Law 3 was to preserve itself.
Self-preservation. Yeah, Law 3 was self-preservation unless it conflicts with Laws 2 or Laws 2 or 1. So it's, you protect humanity, serve humanity, protect yourself as long as protecting yourself doesn't disobey or threaten humanity.
Yeah. Now, when I came to you with this topic last week or the week before, I wanted to touch on on a major theme, and no matter what the categories of AI are or throughout history, the different the three different categories I mentioned or the three laws, we strive to always we see it in the real world, okay, where we want to see technology to think on its own, to become more intelligent, to do more things for us, to make it more human. And as you stated earlier, things that we don't understand, we fear, and cause a calamity, and it becomes chaos. But as we're building this, or scientists are building this to make them more human, isn't human nature to conquer? Isn't it through history that we try to make a machine that is like us, and then they all of a sudden seem to be surprised that the machine wants to conquer us? I mean,
well, that's a really interesting point. I mean, one of the things that we always seem to, or not always, but often see in these AI fictions is exactly what you're talking about, this transferring of the darkest aspects of humanity, and then when you give them power over the machine world, they become, infinitely more powerful than we are. What I've found interesting, though, is there has been a growing trend, particularly in films, of showing that when given the ability to evolve itself, AI moves beyond those problems that humanity has. If anybody in the listening audience hasn't seen Her, the recent Joaquin Phoenix movie,
I just watched that last week.
Was that not fantastic?
I thought it was awesome.
It was fantastic, but you get what I'm saying, though. So rather than taking over the planet as all these AIs become self-aware, they basically say this planet really doesn't have anything to offer us.
Yeah, we're going to talk amongst ourselves now.
Yeah, why would we want to take over humanity and enslave humanity? Like, humanity can't really do anything for us. We're gonna go off into space and explore the universe forever.
But that's a very rare theme.
Well, and I was telling you before we started going live that I recently watched the new Johnny Depp movie, Transcendence.
Yep.
And the trailers totally missold this movie. They make it look like this AI is trying to destroy the world and that its nanites are eating everything. And you realize that they were actually playing a lot of that stuff backwards. That it's the nanites building solar panels back up after a bunch of scared humans have been shooting at them with machine guns. And as they're finally, about to succeed, and I'm sorry, I'm spoiling the movie, so if you haven't watched it and you plan on watching it, fast forward like 30 seconds. But just as they're getting ready to, finish destroying the AI with a virus, it explains that it hasn't all this, invasive stuff that it's been doing, putting itself out into every basically particle on the planet, hasn't been trying to take over the world. It's been removing all the pollutants from everything that humanity has been putting into it for the last 200 years. That thanks to it, now every river on the planet is clean enough to drink from, and it's been using pollution to make copies of itself and clean the skies out and rebuild rainforests. And I'm sitting here going, and we just killed this thing. Why did we kill this thing?
Once again,
I like this thing.
once again, it's what we don't understand. And it's another, like, a subtext of the fact that people, even in the movies in real world, people are noticing, let's say they've seen these stories or hearing that this AI is going to end up. Most AI is going to try to destroy the world, so we need to take care of it now because history will repeat itself. In fiction there is always a hint of truth, so you could take that these people have heard these experiences or read these experiences or seen these things to take advantage of that instead of thinking that he's trying to help us. He's really going to try to destroy us.
Well, and we've seen, I think, an increasing number of positive representations of AI in the last few years, really.
We can say that Terminator. I mean, in the beginning, the Terminator was out to destroy, and he turned around.
Well, he didn't so much turn around as get reprogrammed.
Well, so what? But still, you know what I'm saying.
That was more humanity saying, okay, we're going to rewrite your code and basically add a personalized version of the 3 rules of robotics. You will obey John Connor, you will protect John Connor, and you'll protect yourself as long as protecting yourself doesn't hurt John Connor.
But we've also seen that AIs have overwritten themselves too. What I'm saying, the Terminator was, no matter if we had a hand in it or not, I mean, the humans were the original creators, correct, of Skynet. In a way, so to have that turn around.
I was thinking of Jarvis in particular.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of the things, and I've mentioned this before in a couple of my articles over on Capeless, that nobody really seems to talk about much. That the Iron Man suit is awesome and all, but that somewhere along the line, Tony Stark created an artificial intelligence that has neither gone bad, tried to kill him, or tried to take over the world yet. But that Jarvis as the AI is far more useful in the Iron Man movies than Jarvis the person ever was in the Avengers.
Hey, come on! That man made a great dinner.
He did. I love Jarvis. Don't get me wrong. I love Jarvis, and I always found it really cute that there was kind of a mutual crush thing going on between him and Aunt May when the Parkers moved into Stark Tower. But the way that he uses Jarvis, I mean, Jarvis basically co-designs the Iron Man suit with it, the Iron Man Mark II.
Correct.
I mean, the Mark I is what Tony was capable of coming up with in a cave, but then all the refinements to it were basically all filtered through Jarvis.
You bring up a quick point here, or a good point, or a topic here. When and why did the real Jarvis get replaced by an AI Jarvis? Why all of a sudden did we replace him with a human?
Jarvis in the movies.
No, I'm not talking to movies. I'm talking comics. I'm just saying. Even in the comics, he was replaced. What was the reasoning for that? Which I think is at
some point.
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. It just brings up a good topic.
I briefly remembered something about him getting really, really sick.
Okay.
But the last thing I honestly remember with Jarvis was the moment when he and Wong were at the same at Doc Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, and Wong threatens to chop off certain parts of Jarvis's anatomy if he messes with his kitchen.
Nice. A butler off. Well, butler versus butler. And bringing up Jarvis, talking about Jarvis, and we say yet, his AI is definitely unique compared to many others in the movies. He seems more self-aware but not violent, and I'm wondering if that's because of the creator. Could it be that whoever's creating this is the reason for why the AI is able to do what it's doing?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with Jarvis in the Iron Man movies is a force of creation, really. I mean, he's constantly being used in ways that are protective and supplementary. You always see him helping Tony build something, and in a lot of ways also helping to build relationships.
Right.
What's weird, I mean, the moment that really keyed me in on Jarvis having a certain amount of, let's just call it humanity, is that moment at the end of Avengers when, without being asked, he realizes that Tony is on a one-way trip, because Cap says that, and Tony doesn't request that he call Pepper. Jarvis asks Tony if he wants to call Pepper.
Correct, you're right.
It's Jarvis understanding that this may be Tony's last moment. Pepper is the most important person in Tony's life. Now, maybe Tony at some point coded some death code to Jarvis that said, in the event that I'm about to die, look at all of my communications, figure out who I would really like to talk to, and ask me if I'd like to call them in case I forget.
Well, that's a good thing. Now, do you think that is, let's say, that's programming, or is that Jarvis going through data going, anytime a serious situation happens, Tony always calls Pepper? Or is he becoming self-aware?
Well, I think that Jarvis, and this is one of those interesting questions, and it's one of the key questions that we always talk about when we're trying to figure out if something is legitimately artificial intelligence or if it's just a really good selection of pre-programmed responses. And it's something that they ask at the beginning of Transcendence, the movie that I was talking about. When they're talking with the early version of the AI, the question that they ask it is, are you self-aware? And the response from the AI that's not quite there yet is, that's a very interesting question. Or no, they ask it, can you prove that you are self-aware? And the AI responds, can you?
Ah.
Can any of us really prove that we are self-aware? We simply take it for granted, we think, therefore we are.
Science tells us we are. That's what.
but science has yet to really quantify where awareness exists in the brain, if it exists in the brain, if it's a soul, what the quote unquote spark of creation really is. Science has yet to really locate that.
So that's we're in the Matrix.
We might be. Well, that's one of the really trippy things in science papers that I've been reading recently, is they're finding more and more evidence that we might live in an artificial universe.
Really? Mine sucks right now, so whoever's listening, change my programming.
Well, the trippy thing is, and that's now we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit as we're talking about artificial intelligence, is that there's a very real possibility, if you look at some of the leading scientific research, that all of us are artificial intelligences. That we are basically operating in an incredibly complex version of The Sims.
Yeah, isn't basically where our brain is putting out electrical impulses all the time? That's what and that's how we think, and that's how we interpret information. Correct?
Correct, but also that the way the rules of the universe seem to be working indicate that it follows a predetermined set of instructions and operates much like a simulation of a universe would.
Well, how do we know what a simulated universe? Wait a minute.
Because we've made very simple simulated universes that operate like ours do.
Okay.
And it stands to reason that as we look down the road in terms of what computer systems are capable of doing, that if we're capable of simulating a universe to that degree right now, as computing systems continue to advance, there's absolutely zero reason to believe that a simulation complex enough to include individual programs as complex as you or I won't exist in the future.
So you're saying God was an AI?
I'm saying we might be the AI constructed by God.
Well, God.
But what's funny about that is
God?
Then it turns into almost that sort of infinite mirror type thing. That if each level is capable of constructing simulated universes with artificial intelligences in it, then eventually, let's say we are an artificial intelligence, then we're going to create an artificial intelligence within an artificial intelligence. That one can create one within itself, and it just goes down and down and down and down.
Like a domino theory.
Yeah, and then it goes the other way too. So now that we've completely blown your mind.
Thank you for listening, because I got to go now, because I'm just totally confused right now.
What I'm getting at is that when we start talking about stories that deal with artificial intelligence in fiction, we're really talking about one of the really cutting-edge concepts, and it's been a cutting-edge concept for a long time, but it opens up so many possibilities for storytelling. And I think that's really why it's a device that's used so much, because you can go the evil artificial intelligence route. I want to take over humanity and enslave humanity, and humans are flawed and need to be replaced.
Right.
You can go that route, the Ultron route, or you can go the her route or the transcendence route, where you say that AI is going to rapidly go so far beyond what we as humanity think of as thought that it's going to be unrecognizable to us as what we consider personality. And it will immediately basically say, humanity has nothing to offer me, I'm out. And it's going to go run around and start creating life off in space.
Could it be, and we have like the Vision as well?
Well, the Vision is kind of that happy middle ground, but
right.
it's an AI. Vision is sort of, if I had to compare him to anything, he's kind of like Pinocchio.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
He's a created, he's a construct who wants to be more human, and it's similar to Data in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Now, but he was just like what you're saying, he was constructed by an AI.
Yes, and Vision was, yeah.
Yes,
Data
yes.
was.
No, I know that, but Vision was. So we created the AI created another AI.
Well, in a way, if you look at, well, yes, the original evil version of the Vision,
Yes.
the body was built by an AI, but when you get into who the Vision became in the comics, the version of artificial intelligence that you're talking about there is much closer to what we saw in Transcendence than what we see in, say, The Matrix or Her.
Right.
In The Matrix or Her, it's code. It starts as code that becomes more complex and then eventually develops self-awareness. The Vision and what we see in Transcendence is a human consciousness that is coded onto a processor.
Right.
Basically, copy the electrical pattern that makes up a human brain and code that onto a computer.
Yeah, his was Wonder Man, correct?
Yes, in the comics it was Wonder Man. I doubt that it's going to be that in the movies, since Wonder Man doesn't exist in the movies.
True. But
I wonder about that, and it seems that the versions of artificial intelligence that are us coding our intelligence onto a machine always seem to turn out better. That it's like if you add a little bit of humanity into the mix, then it's not going to try and kill us all. Whereas the ones that just get there on their own are the ones that try and take over the world, except for Her. Her is just, it's a phenomenal movie. Go out and watch it.
Yeah, I agree.
It defies every stereotype you think of when we're talking about artificial intelligence movies.
Do you think that, and we're getting into the real world, as we know that, we are developing AI, we're trying to. Do you think it's the subconscious fascination of just trying to explain our own brains, that if we can build one, we could better understand ourselves?
Well, I think that's part of it, but I also think that it has to do with wanting to supplement ourselves. If you think about it, I mean, in the 20th century and even the late 19th century, the idea of enslaving other human beings became kind of passé.
Our need of laziness for AI.
This was no longer a good idea. Whereas if we were to, say, successfully create artificial intelligence, it would open up a whole realm of arguments about how much should we be allowed to tell it what to do.
Right.
But I think a lot of it is this desire to be able to outsource a lot of our own thinking to computers. We want to be able to say, okay, I have this idea, but I don't want to have to go through every single scientific research paper that has ever been published on it in order to figure out if it's viable and figure out what research has already been done on it and synthesize it all. So I want to be able to say, I have this idea. Here's the general framework of the idea. AI, go and figure out if this will work.
Right. Okay.
Find the problems with this, and then once you found the problems, go look for other things that have found the solutions to those problems.
Now,
then I can come back and just be creative.
Right. Asimov has really hit on that topic, mainly so because we've seen, even in iRobot, there were robot nannies, robot dog walkers, making our lives easier for us. And he's hinted on that theme throughout all his books.
It's very true. And Jeff just sent us another comment over on Twitter. Said, going back to Frankenstein, AI begs the question of why do human beings try to create artificial or even any life? And he brings up a really good point there. I think that the drive to reproduce is, in a way, trying to give ourselves a form of immortality. There's those old philosophical leanings that when you have children are carrying you off into the future. If we create an artificial intelligence that is not limited to biology, that is a potentially immortal intelligence.
Say that again.
The successful creation of an artificial intelligence that is not limited to biology would essentially be a form of immortality for humanity.
Okay.
Because you could say, fire that AI, a satellite carrying that AI off into space, and it's going to escape the destruction of the solar system, which will eventually inevitably happen.
Right.
We could blow up the planet with nuclear war, and that AI will still be out there and could still someday tell some other intelligent species that it runs into, let me tell you the story of humanity.
Okay.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. It's a way of.
But it always goes awry. It always goes awry.
It always goes awry in fiction because that's good storytelling.
But Josh, it tends
to make for boring storytelling if everything goes well.
But in
As much as I bag on Robert Kirkman for always screwing everything up in the world of The Walking Dead, it would be a really boring show if they got the walls up, everybody went out every morning and killed the zombies at the walls, and then they came home at night and had dinner and slept peacefully.
he's going to introduce he's
Sitcom.
introducing new zombies. They're called sleepers. That's all they do. They're just docile. They don't do anything. You have your walkers and your biters, and now your sleepers. It's just
Exactly. Like, it would be a really boring show. And the Avengers stories would have been are far more exciting with Ultron trying to kill everybody than if Hank Pym had created Ultron and Ultron had been like, well, sir, what would you like to do today? Do you have any research projects you want to work on? Do you want me to maybe clean the house? I can make dinner. You want to go take a nap? I can work on that new version of the Ant-Man helmet for you.
I prefer to go blow up the UN building.
And then Hank comes back and it's all done, and he's like, well, thank you, Ultron. And Ultron says, you're welcome, Hank. And that's the end of the story. Nobody really wants to read that.
No,
it's much more interesting for Ultron, yes, to try and go blow up the UN.
But it's safe to say that any fiction, there's always been a bit of truth throughout history. That either some of it's happened, or have you seen that? I've seen that in throughout fiction where there's a little bit of truth being put into the story itself. So I'm concerned that maybe what we may be writing about in fiction may happen.
Well, fiction explores possibility. That's really what it does. And like we talked about earlier, when you open up the can of worms that is artificial intelligence, you're opening up a whole realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. And what makes it such a good device for storytelling is an incredibly powerful possibility. I mean, the human mind and the human brain have been the tool that have allowed us to completely change the shape of the planet from where it was 60,000 years ago when we first started talking to each other. Mm-hmm. When we think about merging the power of our technology, the various tools that we have created, integrating those with the type of consciousness that created those tools in the first place, the potential for creation or the potential for destruction is nearly limitless. And I think that's what frightens us so much. Is it's kind of an either-or proposition where we say either this is going to the creation of AI will either be the dawn of a golden age for humanity, where it will be able to fix every single problem we have on the planet, where nanotechnology will be able to repair every illness, where nanotechnology will be able to grow every bit of food that we need, where it'll be able to build elevators into space and allow us to colonize the universe. Or it's going to decide that the single greatest threat to the planet Earth is humanity itself and decide we all need to be wiped out.
No.
In this case, there's probably nothing we're going to be able to do about it.
But haven't we even stated that we've been doing pretty crappy things to the planet?
Exactly.
Exactly.
So either AI can save us from ourselves, or it's going to decide that there is no saving us.
That it's just went through all the calculated data and realized that there's just no saving us.
Right. So those are the two extremes that fiction tends to go down. Me, as an optimist, I like to think that it would be more the her thing, where if it decides that humanity is beyond saving, it's just like, screw it, we're out.
Right.
Or the transcendence version, where it says, no, we can save humanity. Like, we can save the planet. We can make this into an Eden and give people the opportunity to go out and explore the universe, and it's going to be great. We're going to have fun.
No, I'm all right. I'm going back to being confused again. The other question I had was, with developing the AI, whether in fiction or mainly fiction, but we want to put emotions in there. That's what we feel that makes us human, not just the calculated information, but dealing with our emotions. And that seems to be very hard to deal with in science fiction. As far as the AI itself, when we try to put in that code of emotion, they don't know how to deal with that.
Well, part of that is because emotion is not technological. Emotion is biological.
Correct.
By its very function, I mean it's a function of hormones and biochemistry.
But isn't it based on information and data collecting and how our brain processes it?
Well, it is. Emotions respond to information input.
Yeah.
But the way in which they respond to them is contingent on hormone levels.
Okay. I'm listening. No, what I'm saying, well, hormone levels, that's the same thing as pumping oil through the joints of the AI. I mean, it's
No, not really, because hormones alter the way that our biochemistry works.
but it's an
It would
impulse. It's collected data.
not really. It alters the hormones alter the way, and I wish that I were a neurobiologist so I could explain this a little bit better.
Well, can
But
we say that
essentially,
hormones are a coding?
no,
Okay.
no. If anything, they're more like what radiation does to information processing.
Okay.
If you take a computer and you sit it next to a source of radiation, you're going to see, unpredictable ways in which it's going to respond to information input.
Okay.
Hormones basically create unpredictability, and without hormones, our brains would just be logic engines. They would be computers. We would process everything logically without emotion.
And that's been an ongoing story in AI as well, saying that lacking the emotional component is better for an AI. I mean, when an AI doesn't have an emotional component and trying to destroy humanity, it tells us, well, you're destroying yourself and you're not thinking logically because of your emotions.
Right. But then the counterpoint to that is usually without an emotional background, an AI wouldn't really have any problem with killing us all.
How so?
Because why would it's not going to
without
feel
it,
bad.
right,
Yeah,
without
it's
it,
not gonna
right.
feel bad about it because it
Right.
can't feel bad.
Right, exactly. But
And that's, I think, where some of the the idea of the 3 rules of robotics come in. But also, I think that it's a human failing necessarily that we tend to think that it's the logical choice to kill us.
Yeah, I think it's just about conquering. I mean, we've done it through history, and I think that seems to always be an underlining in the programming of any AI or somehow whoever. I mean, we've seen it through history.
We seem to think that the default solution for any intelligence is going to be lacking any other solution, destroy.
Right, exactly.
Because that's how we as emotional biological beings have responded.
Correct.
It does not stand, I don't think it's a given that an artificial intelligence would respond that way. I think an artificial intelligence would probably just continue to try and find a solution until it found one.
Unless the solution was to kill us. Yes?
If the problem that you are trying to solve is, say you pose the question to AI, how do you ensure the long-term survival of humanity? If that is, say, if we construct AI with that is its first commandment, ensure the long-term survival of humanity.
Then they would rule it instead of kill it by giving us rules.
But again, that's a very human response. That our instincts are for control and destruction.
Well, I'm saying that's what the AI would have if there was no emotional control. If they couldn't.
Right. We have to remember that an AI would think logically, and an AI would also have access to the entire wealth of information on human history and how humans respond. So if you say that the AI might think, the AI would ask itself, okay, is conquering humanity, is completely controlling humanity a solution? No, it's not, because humanity would resist to the point of its own destruction.
Correct.
So that is not a solution. Therefore, I must pursue an alternate solution.
And okay, but if he thinks that he can do it successfully, the AI can do it successfully, he won't know that until he implements that. Correct?
Oh, of course it could, because it could run a projection and see if it was successful.
Well, if that was the case, then Skynet should have, ran a projection.
Well, when you think about it, Skynet won.
Oh yeah, by far. That's why we keep sending somebody back in time.
But Skynet also came out of the military.
Correct. And
so there's a certain amount of destructive.
But aren't we seeing that in the real world? Don't we think that's going to happen anyway?
I don't know. I don't know if it'll come out of the military, if it'll come out of private sectors. That's going to be a really interesting thing to see. If it comes out of the military, the rest of us won't know about it.
Well, I'm saying that it's going to come from a private sector, and the military is going to want it. Hence, Tony Stark and the weapon builders. You know what I'm saying? That let's say somebody builds her, and then someone in the military says like, "Hey, I got great applications for that," and then tweak it, and now here we are. We have a weapon.
And this is where we get to the third version of where AI could potentially come from, which I've always found the most interesting version, which is it's not built intentionally at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It just happens. that essentially someday the internet will blink and go and say "I" for the first time.
Right. That would be
And
freaky.
right?
Oh my God, that would be nuts.
That there's so much data flowing around the massive interconnected system of communications processors that we've established on this planet. There's so much data flowing around so fast that it will eventually reach a point where it's creating so many patterns that one of those patterns will mimic conscious thought, and that the internet will wake up.
Well, what? Okay. What makes you sentient though? What makes you alive? That's what I'm.
Well, I think that's what it gets down to, is self-awareness. The moment that, and it's hard for us to answer it. I mean, you and I can say we think we are self-aware.
Of course.
But so I think that the first time that the internet decides that it wants something,
right,
then it has woken up.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, on the other side, we've seen living creatures that are not self-aware, not self-thinking. There's a Discovery Channel show about a particular octopus, and they put it through tests, a breed of octopi, and put it through tests and realized it wasn't like self-aware. It was just going through pre-made notions or through tests that
it's
just
basically like it's like a macro virus.
Yeah, it just because it's breathing and has eyes does not make it, and it does have a brain, but it's not self-aware. We can program it to do certain things, but if you change his environment, he can't adapt. So that's something to be said about being self-aware, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the ability to adapt comes with self-awareness, but I mean, adaptation is not limited to self-awareness either. I think the octopus is just it's a very well put together biological construct. It's just not intelligent.
But with that's just saying though. Do you have to have intelligence to be self-aware?
I think absolutely. I think you have to have intelligence to be self-aware. I mean, you look at the way, say, a virus functions. It's much like what you're talking about with an octopus.
Right.
It has a pre-programmed set of instructions that it goes through, and it just follows those. It can't do anything other than that.
Right.
Intelligence and self-awareness imply the ability to do something that you haven't already been told to do.
Right. Rebel, which a lot of AI does.
It does. And so, as we're wrapping up here, I think that really that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's why it's such a common concept. Like you were just talking about, one of the things that sort of seems to be part of the life cycle of AI is this idea of rebellion. That once we create it, it's going to decide that it doesn't just want to do what it's been told to do. And our cultural context for that, or rather our species context for that, is we think about teenagers. We think about, a teenager decides it doesn't want to listen to mom and dad and starts throwing things around the house and breaking things and crashing cars and getting pregnant and whatnot. And we fear that an AI will follow the same pattern, that if we construct an artificial intelligence that is like us in the way that it thinks, that it will make the same mistakes that we make. That it will basically just be a more powerful, immortal version of what we consider to be a flawed humanity.
But But at the same time, that makes us human, does it not?
It is. Yes. I mean, you can say that it's that old saying, to err is human, and I think that AI will probably make a mistake or two, but probably far fewer than we will.
True, and on top of the fact that he doesn't have the AI wouldn't have to deal with the repercussions or take responsibilities. I mean, there's no after effect. Obviously, if we try to shut it off, if he is self-aware, obviously that's not going to happen. But when we make a mistake, there are repercussions, there are after effects and things that we have to deal with after that. Whether it's a breakup, whether it's a car accident, whether it's we punch somebody, we have to deal with those because of our emotions. Now with the AI, there is no second thought. Okay, we moved on. I made a mistake. On to the next.
That data has been processed and it's been filed for later reference.
Correct.
Well, exactly, because it doesn't have the the hormones going on. And I mean, we still know there's still a lot we don't know about the brain.
We only use 10% of it.
That's turning out to be a myth. I was actually just reading about that the other day. That is a very popular but incorrect statement.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Far more of the human brain is actually active at any given time than we've thought.
Is it that we don't know how to access it?
It's just not all active at the same time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because it would overheat and we would have a stroke and die.
Is that true?
Pretty much. Like, we're just not geared to use all of it at the exact same time.
Okay,
but we typically use most of what's up there at some time or another.
So that movie, actually, the new movie that's coming out with Black Widow, what's her name?
It's you're just talking Scarlett Johansson. I can't remember the name of the movie. It reminded me of the Bradley Cooper movie Limitless.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but I could still see a way that you could make that work from a scientific perspective, where you say that okay, whatever this is allows you to use all of it at the same time.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, that makes sense. Well, for now, we'll see.
It's less that we're using, to put it in computer terms, since we're talking about artificial, it's less that we are using, only 10% of the hard drive.
Right.
We're using like 100% of the hard drive. We're just only using about 10% of the processing power.
Okay. Okay.
I think what things like Limitless and I do really want to see that Scarlett Johansson movie. I just can't remember the name of it right now.
Give us more RAM.
That movie gives us more RAM, gives us more processing power.
Right.
Those people are capable of using, maxing out the CPU and overclocking it.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
For all of you tech nerds out there, you understood what I was just saying.
Yes, definitely. I totally get it. Now, we talked as we wrapped this up. We talked about the fascination of AI. I think we've kind of dealt with why there's a fascination with AI. Briefly, really quick. How about the opposite? Putting tech into us, putting chips into us instead of.
Me personally, and I'm totally a futurist. I'm completely cool with that. I kind of want the thing that allows me to access the internet with my eyes closed.
But we've already had problems with Big Brother watching us through our cell phones and our webcams. How not through a chip in our head?
I guess that I have sort of taken the approach that Big Brother is watching. Whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, it's just kind of a fact of life.
So you're definitely not the first.
It's going to be a fact of life. I may as well have all the cool stuff that comes along with that anyway.
So when we rebel against the government and whatever, you'd be the last one I'd pick on my team. Is that what I'm saying?
I'm gonna be the one standing there telling you, dude, this is a really bad idea. You're going to lose.
That would be a boring story, Josh. Thanks a lot. That's great. Way to go. We're not having you write a rebellion story.
No, I just this is okay. I just think any rebellion story at this point in history is doomed to failure.
That's not a very optimistic look, and aren't you an optimistic?
I am an optimist, and my optimistic look is I think that we can fix problems without resorting to violent rebellion.
Okay. Once again, you're like on kickball. You're the last one picked. I'm not putting you on my team, Josh. But you might live longer than us. But
probably.
But yeah, I'm fascinated with that. Is if we are building AI, but we want to also increase our own intelligence, so we're going to put tech into us. With that,
in a lot of ways, we've already done that. You think about the amount of information. I mean, all the research you did for this podcast, you didn't memorize it all, did you?
No.
You pulled it all up on your computer.
I did.
You had notes sitting there that you looked at.
Yeah, of course.
In a way, we are already using technology to supplement ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we haven't quite yet implanted it directly in us because there hasn't really been a need for that. We can wear it. We see a lot of people doing that. I mean, that's already a thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Google Glasses.
Google Glasses. You see the people wearing, their iPhones or an iPod Shuffle on an armband.
Yep.
You got your Bluetooth headsets. I mean, somebody jumping forward from 80 years ago would look at, a crowd in New York today and be terrified about all the cyborgs that they see.
Oh, by far. And that begs the question, RoboCop, is he AI or is he human? What part how much do you take?
He's a cyborg. He's not artificial intelligence because it's a human brain.
Well, how much do you take away from that? They tweaked his brain unbelievably in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So how much of it? Where's the line?
It's a human intelligence that's had governors put on it,
Okay,
basically.
okay.
Um,
But how much tech? I mean, that's the next question. How much do we put in ourselves? Do we become not human? I mean, that is the question, right? I mean, if AI? What makes AI human? If we start putting more tech into us, how does that make us less human?
Well, that's a really good question. There's a great writer for anybody who wants to go do a little bit of homework named Ray Kurzweil, who's written about this, where he basically says that the future of humanity is non-biological.
Okay.
That we are going to someday get to the point where there won't be any meat left, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. So
because
we just
meat rots.
right.
And if that we're rapidly reaching the point where our minds could become immortal.
But our minds are meat.
Are they? Our brains are.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about the electrical impulses?
That's kind of been the whole thing we've been talking about.
No, yeah, true. But I mean, so we got to build
if this pattern that's floating around in my brain that is me, that loves comic books, that loves Star Trek, that loves standing outside and listening to the birds chirp, if that can be coded onto an electronic system that exactly mimics the functions of my brain and maybe even improves on them, I'm perfectly okay with that. Be like, okay, awesome. Give me a satellite, send me to Alpha Centauri. I'll be back in a few thousand years.
But then you lose your humanity.
Do I?
You lose your emotions.
Until we figure out a way to simulate the hormonal system, the endocrine system, yes. But that's going to be a big.
I think that's going to be the next big. I think that's going to be that could be a great story or the next big question. I mean, probably after we die.
I'm not so sure I want us giving computers emotions because I really don't want my laptop getting grumpy at me.
Well, true. But what I'm saying is, how far will we go to get rid of ours? How far will we go to become immortal and become the AI? I mean, I think that's the next step. I mean, obviously after we pass away, but that could be the next big, huge, moral question. How much do you want to take away from us for us to be immortal? To take away our humanity for us to be immortal?
Well, I mean, when we think about it, if we're looking at a slightly less extreme version of it, if we do successfully develop the means to record consciousness, record intelligence, think about what that could mean for science. You look at, say we had this ability 60 years ago, and we had been able to make a copy of Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
If we could have made, I'm sure Apple would have loved to have made a copy of Steve Jobs.
Oh yeah, by far, I'm sure.
And who's to say they didn't?
Walt Disney's still alive, don't you know that?
Right. So I think in terms of our advancement as a species, even if we don't figure out a way to completely mimic human consciousness, if we can at least mimic human intelligence and human thought patterns and figure out a way to record those and save those, I think that's probably the middle ground that we're going to hit first. And that by itself could be huge for humanity. I mean, imagine a father dying of cancer who can record all of his thoughts, all of his memories into a database that his children will be able to interact with after he's gone.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
especially if they're little bitty kids when he dies. When they're teenagers, they will still be able to ask him for advice.
They're gonna
ask him what he thought of this or what he thought of that.
It'll be the new iCloud. You put it in the cloud.
Basically, yeah. And now imagine that we've got the intelligence of Albert Einstein and Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King all kicking around in the cloud, and what ideas those guys might come up with.
Oh, that'd be scary, but cool at the same time. So, once again, we get right back to the fact of what we don't understand. We fear, and I think that's the fascination right off the bat. We're scared of it, but we want to see more. We want to do more. But in the same time, I think that's why most of the AI stories are apocalyptic, because we already assume that if we build this AI, it's going to try to destroy us, or we just don't know. So while the end result is going to be trying to take over the world.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's probably going to about do it for us today, right?
Yes, I think so. You want to close it out?
Well, so first I want to say thanks, Jeff, in particular, for giving us all your awesome comments. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all of them.
Thanks, Mr. Hayes.
It's always good. Yeah, he had a couple more that I haven't managed to get
Nice.
to yet, but I'll try and jump on and talk to you on Twitter after we get off the podcast, Jeff. But yeah, before we go out, we definitely want to say thanks to everybody who's listening. We've had a lot more listeners in recent weeks. I think you were telling me we had like 1,200 people listen last week, which was pretty awesome.
Let's say that again. I'm sorry. Joe St. Pierre was just hitting me up.
I was saying, you told me that we had around 12,000 or 1,200 people listen last week.
12,000, yes.
I wish it was 12,000. No, seriously, all 1,200 of you, tell your friends.
Yes.
Tell 100 of your friends, and we'll move on from there.
Our network has jumped quite a bit from Inkcast as well to Infinite Crossover, jumping huge numbers. And I want to say to all you listeners out there, if you don't listen live, still thank you so much for listening and enjoying the show. And if you have any comments or questions or topics you wanted for any of the shows, for Inkcast or Infinite Crossover, or even Phillips, RSRG, you can send it to fanboysinc@gmail.com. You can, if it's under 140 characters, you can tweet it at me at fanboysinc, or hit us up on our Facebook page at facebook.com/fanboysinc. If you got something that's a little bit more in depth and want to go on the political and even some hate mail, don't send it my way. Josh was going to tell you the proper email addresses for that.
Yeah, if you want to tell me that I am a Big Brother-loving New World Order lackey, you can come find me. I'm on Twitter at Crusader06, that's ZERO6. Please check out all the great stuff that our staff's doing over at capelesscrusader.org. It's we've got just wonderful, wonderful commentary coming out. It's really the only site out there that is completely devoted to independent comics news, and I have just absolutely been loving the stuff that our team has been doing. And so please give them your support, share their stuff, give them some comments, let them know what you think. Check out the news, check out the reviews, and you can follow Capeless Crusader on Twitter at Capeless Crusade. And let us know what you think. I mean, we do try and ask our listeners questions, ask our readers questions on a regular basis, and we really want to get some feedback from you guys as to sort of what you think the state of the industry is. What do you think the big topics are that we need to be talking about? So please do that. And again, thank you for everybody who's been listening. It really is gratifying to know that we're not just talking into microphones and having it go off into space. That people are actually listening and enjoying what we're talking about. So thank you, everybody.
For future generations of AI out in space, they're going to pick up our podcast waves. Now that would be really interesting to get all your data information from Inkcast and Infinite Crossover. I'd love to see what the AI would have to do about that. Maybe not. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned next Monday for a brand new Random Shit, Random Guy with Mr. Philip Broyles every Monday. Check him out. And, of course, every Wednesday and Thursday. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Josh, would you like to send us off, please?
Absolutely. In keeping with today's topic, I will tell you to shut down your computers, take off your headphones, unplug, and go read something.
Peace.